Good evening. I'm going to call the first Finance and Budget Committee of the Whole to order for this term. Welcome members of the Quorum Court and the public. I have asked J.P. Wilson if he will do us the honor of prayer and pledge this evening. J.P. Wilson.
Heavenly Father, thank you so much that we could assemble together in a free country and exercise the rights of free government. We ask that you might bless the deliberations that we have this evening and throughout this coming year. We thank you, Lord, that in a free country we have several examples that we might emulate in our nation's history. We thank you, Lord, that even last month we could look at the example of Dr. Martin Luther King, who reminded us that we should let justice roll down as waters and righteousness as a mighty stream. We thank you, Lord, that we could look to his example and the example of others. We pray, Lord, that we would heed his words. We hear many people who call for justice, but we pray, Lord, that we might seek your forgiveness because not nearly enough of us call for righteousness in a time when righteousness is needed. Dr. King made it clear that both were important, just as Amos in the scriptures that Dr. King quoted said it was important. And I pray, Lord, that we might follow their example. And Lord, tonight and any time that we meet, we ask for your wisdom and we ask, Lord, for your guidance. And we trust the results to divine providence, in whose name we pray. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Justice Wilson. Now we'll move to the adoption of the agenda. I had sent out some items earlier this afternoon that I hope to add. J.P. Ecke.
I move that we add the amended agenda items to the agenda.
Okay, I have a motion to amend the agenda to add items 23O-025 and item 23-R-004. We will make those items number 29 and 30. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Those opposed? The agenda has been amended. Do I have a motion to adopt the amended agenda? J.P. Ecke?
I have a motion to adopt the agenda.
Okay, I have a motion to adopt the amended agenda by J.P. Ecke. Second by J.P. Lyons. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? The agenda has been adopted. Before we get in our business this evening, we're in new territory here. We're in uncharted waters now that we've moved to this process of committees as a whole. And what I wanted to add tonight is a discussion item, which is item number 4. We need to discuss the leadership of both of our committees now. And, I want you guys to know as judge, I really respect you guys' autonomy. You're duly elected as justices. I want to do whatever your pleasure is. And so what I want to do is try to tee this up tonight with what I see the options are and then leave it to you guys for discussion. And maybe then at some point we'll have a vote of the way we would like to move forward, and then the future committee meetings will do it in that way, okay? So I've put a lot of thought into this, and to be honest with you, I don't really have a strong recommendation, but this is how I see the lay of the land. Moving forward with the committees and the leadership, we need a chairman and vice chairman, and we can establish that in a few ways. I can appoint that leadership to the committees. You guys can vote the leadership of the committees by taking nominations from the body, which is kind of what we've historically done on the Quorum Court with the committees before. Or I think I discussed with you guys the possibility that we could rotate the chairs through the committee process. And so, I know that would be radically new. I think we cannot foresee kind of what all the challenges maybe that would be, but I'm open to that. I think initially what that would be is we would just start through the roster and rotate through it and just appoint somebody to open the meeting every time. Now, that being said, I open the floor for discussion, and we'll start that process and see what your guys' feelings are and what's the pleasure of the court. JP Lemming?
Well, I personally feel like we need a chairperson. I think that to just keep to moving it around, I mean, if you get halfway through something and it gets discussed, and if the leader don't keep up with it, keep activating it, it'll die. And if you put it in another person's hands and then they got to back up and catch up on everything, I personally think we need a chair and a vice chair. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. I think it'll work the other way too, but I think we'll lose some momentum, I guess to say.
Yep, good thoughts. And I would just add that, you know, if we go one way, doesn't mean that, and we all get frustrated with the process that halfway through the year we can't. Yeah, I mean, so I'll just add that. But JP Washington.
Thank you, Judge Deakins. So I see how rotating chairs could be beneficial, because I think that we need to keep in mind that the purpose of the chair is to make sure that a meeting is orderly, not to assume all of the responsibility for that particular committee. And so I believe that we could effectively rotate a chair and a vice chair for one of the committees. For the committee that is going to, I don't know what the name of it is, the county services, that's going to include all of that. Because if we don't, it'll be like whoever that chairperson is or the chairman is, that you're chairing like 3 separate committees. That's a lot of responsibility. So I think that it would work in that setting. Now, I do believe that for the Budget and Finance Committee, that we would benefit from having a set chair and co-chair, because as we start the budget process, you will need a person who is the point of contact. So we don't necessarily have to do the same thing for both committees, but I do believe that rotating the chairs would be beneficial in the county services, and that us having a set chair and vice chair for the Budget and Finance Committee would be the best case scenario.
JP Pond.
If it was appropriate and legal and everything else to what I'm about to suggest, or what I'd be in favor of, and just to avoid maybe some confusion from time to time, if we're going to have a committee of the whole, I'd just soon the county judge be the chair of the committee of the whole, and that when the county judge cannot be present, that the county judge would appoint someone to take his place. That's just me. That's just a lesser of a way to for confusion to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Pond. Justice Coger.
Thank you. Well, JP Washington brought up something that I was going to bring up. I was wondering if we could have a different, maybe one committee one way and the other, because I was thinking kind of like what's been said, that for finance and budget, we might need, someone who was the chairman. But my question, I'm intrigued though by the idea of the rotating the chairs, and I'm just wondering, do you know someplace where that you've seen to where that's working, or other jurisdictions are trying that, or maybe you went to a conference or something? I don't know how that came about.
I have to admittedly say that I have not heard that is a process at anywhere. That would be a new thing, I think, in Washington County. Now, of course, when we were going through the committees as a whole, there's a lot of places that do that.
Right.
But the moving of the chair is something that was something that I came up with just as an idea. I have no statistics on that.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
JP Ecke?
Thank you, Judge. If we're going to have a rotating chair, my concern and my objection to it is it's going to take a lot of cohesiveness in laying out, these are our objectives, this is our vision, this is our mission, and these are our goals. And it has to be the same for each rotating chairman, because then you're going to have confusion. I know that last term, chairman of personnel, I was able to set out, these are our objectives, this is our vision, mission, goal, and how important it was for each JP to engage our elected officials and not to just rely on the chair to do all the work for them, and they just come in and they listen to what the chair had to do. Everybody was assigned something, because I know that through engagement, it drove change. And I believe that that is why we were successful last year. Everybody had to engage. Everybody had to understand the process of personnel. To bring that experience, those that were on Personnel Committee will have that experience and how important it is to engage and not rely on just the chair or the vice chair for all the information. It's going to take a like-minded JPs to accomplish that, but I know that all things are possible. And I believe in the positive, because positive builds. So that is my only, I don't say it's an objection, but it would be a challenge to that, but I don't. I think there's stability in one person, in chairing it, and if they're well organized and are able to cast the vision and engage the other JPs for them to go out and engage in personnel with the HR director, to engage in jails with our sheriff and his staff, to go out and engage. And what did you learn? What did you learn? What did you learn? This is what you do. I think that is a stabilizing process. And maybe perhaps try that for the first 6 months, and once everybody feels comfortable with one another, with mindsets and personalities, then changes can be made. And then all of us colleagues are just, we can always change. And as women, we have that prerogative anyway. But that's what I bring. We really have to be united in thought and purpose. Thank you.
Further discussion on this? A couple thoughts that I have when we're talking about this. Now, if we elect or appoint leadership in the committees, I see that as problematic if later on moving that, moving from that and trying to replace that person. I hope you guys can understand that too. So, any more input? JP Lemming?
So every time one of us thinks of what we want to put on the agenda, we have to call you to get it certified to put it on? Or how do we do that?
Well, right now, that's kind of the process anyways. We want you guys to submit that to the county attorney, just so we can help you guys shepherd that through any kind of a legal process that we can need. But, it's nobody's prerogative to try to.
I've had issues with trying to go through that process before to get things on, and you get pushed away and you get told no, and there's several things you have to jump through the hoops. Hopefully that's going to work itself out, and that's not going to be that way. If the case is we got to go through you and your office all the time to get everything on the agenda.
Couple things. I certainly hope you're not talking about my office now.
No,
It's
historically. You
And
know
then-
what I'm talking about.
No, I hear
and,
you.
And it's in the past, and the past is behind us, but we want to move forward, but we don't want to have these same issues.
Let me add to that a couple things. There might be some advantage that both, of course, me and Chief of Staff Johnson come from this horseshoe, and so we really respect what you guys have to do and what you're kind of facing. So it's never my intention to deny anybody access to the agenda. Now, I don't think that's settled even, that should not be even if you have a chair. Even when I served as finance and budget chair, I really tried to take that heavy that I'm not there to deny and construct that agenda to what I want as chair. I think Justice Pond brought up something very interesting that, yes, I could chair committees of the whole, and I'm willing to do that with the caveat that there will be several times throughout the year that I might not be available for these committee meetings just because of meetings and stuff like that. If that's something viable that you guys want to explore, what we would do in that sense is I would appoint somebody to start the meeting, much like has historically been done when the judge cannot be here for the quorum court meeting. And I would let everybody take a turn in that sense too. I would just start on the roster and rotate that around. If, just for.
I have no problem with that. I think it'd work good, but I can see still having, well, I'm not gonna say that until I see eye to eye what happens.
And understand too, what I'm trying to facilitate here is I don't want, especially with our new members, I understand you guys are very involved. You've hit the ground running. But I want every member of this quorum court to be involved in the business of the county. And I don't want you to ever think you're usurping your duty to a chair, and expecting that person to essentially do, your independent homework. And so that's what I would say to each of you guys. I want to empower each member of the quorum court, if you will.
You need to do your homework. Thank you.
Any other discussion? So we kind of have, I think if somebody would like to move approval of one of these options, I think we could take a vote of the body. If we're ready for that, I'm not trying to stifle any good discussion here, but it sounds like some of them, it appears we have, Justice Pond, I don't want to cut off you guys, so.
Are we gonna do nominations now, or make a motion to, I move that we nominate Patrick Deakins, the county judge, to chair these meetings. I second.
Okay, I have a nomination by Justice Pond, a second by Justice Dean. Excuse me, I'm so sorry about that. Justice Wilson, would you like to go ahead and speak to this? You can go ahead, please, if you want to share your thoughts. Justice Wilson?
I was going to comment on something before that motion, and it may be a moot point at this juncture. I was just listening to the discussion about possibly rotating the chair of a committee. I'm not saying that I was against that notion, but I know that when you look at a track meet, when you're running a relay race and you drop the baton, the best case scenario is it looks bad, or you might probably lose the race, but you run the risk, in a situation like that, you run the risk of dropping the baton every single month that a committee meets. And some of the biggest criticism that this court has received since I've been observing things is if we do something that doesn't look right to the public. And I would hate to see us adopt something that could potentially look like on-the-job training every month. And I don't mean to say that anyone here is not competent enough to take on a role. I think anybody that wants to head a committee any given month is capable of doing that, but it's one of those things that if you've never done it before, you've never done it before. And, you sit in that chair for the first time, and I'd be one of them, I would just feel like, okay, am I really ready to do this? And you want to get it right. And if you're rotating that every single month, I just have some concerns. I'm not saying I'm against the notion, because I sympathize with anybody that says we want to get more and more people involved in that capacity. I really do believe that's a good idea, but I wonder how it's going to play out. And that was the only comments that I had along those lines.
Thank you, Justice Wilson. Justice Anderson?
The one comments that I would have, and I would go along with the motion that's been made, you are here full-time, and you have really a closer access to some of the information than we do, and a lot of us also are working full-time jobs outside, so we can't, I think, put the effort toward that, or that you can. And that's why I agree with, I think that with putting you as the chair on, that would be the best bet. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Anderson. Justice Ecke?
Thank you, Judge. My question is to you, sir. How do you feel time-wise, well, not time-wise, just how do you feel chairing the committee of the whole?
I mean, I'm up
What
for
is your
that.
thought, what's your thought process is in doing so?
Well, there's a couple things I guess I would say is, I think Justice Anderson has a good point. I mean, we're intrinsically involved in the agenda just because we're there and we're helping put it together. I feel like I'm about to get voluntold something, which I'm up for it. I really want to serve you guys. The other thing, and maybe it's the best of both worlds, because I do think there will be times where I will not be able to make the meetings. And so maybe we still have some consistency of a chair per se, but I think we would also have the great opportunity to get some of you members, that chairman experience. I think once you do it once, you won't think it's as glamorous as you might have assumed. But I think maybe that's the best. I don't know. Maybe it's the best of both worlds. But cannot say enough that I'm here to do you guys' pleasure in your meetings and to serve you guys. And if we were to move to that scenario, we would definitely have, and I would dedicate myself to keeping you guys much, much more informed than maybe has traditionally been tried to do. So, were you? Okay. JP Lemming, Justice Lemming?
What would you think about adding a vice chair, and the vice chair could be when you're not here? He'd be here you wouldn't have to appoint nobody, and then you wouldn't have to call all of us all the time. Your vice chair, you could rely on them to help you communicate with us. I mean, I think we need somebody.
Yeah. I mean, I'm open to that too. I think anytime I would be absent from a meeting, what I will say, only rebuttal I might have to that, anytime I will be absent from a meeting, I think we'll know from scheduling weeks in advance. It'll be something that's planned. And so I would be working with whoever that person is up on of course, and I will reach out to that person. There may be some of you members who don't want to be chair, and I understand that. So we would just move to the next person, if you will, and we would prepare that person throughout that time. So I don't necessarily see the need if you were going to elect a vice chair, you might as well have the leadership there. So that would be my thought. But once again, I'm open to whatever.
Let's try it.
JP Rio Stafford.
Thank you. So my thought is, and this is my observation from, just the past 2 years, is that no matter which way we go on this, it would be great to have a representative from the executive branch at all the committee meetings, whether it's yourself, whether it's the chief of staff or the county attorney or somebody, because in my experience, we've had too many committee meetings where things have come up on the agenda, folks have questions, and there's been nobody here to answer questions. And obviously that's not on you, because you're new in that seat. And the past is the past, but that's been my experience over the last couple years. And so that's what I would ask is that there's somebody here to answer questions, whether you're the chair or not the chair, or whether you're here or not.
Understood, Justice Rio Stafford. And I will say it is my expectation that there will always be somebody from my staff at our meetings to represent us. Justice Coger?
Is there a motion on the table? I don't remember.
There's a
Okay.
motion by JP, Justice Pond.
And I'd like to second if it hasn't been seconded.
Okay.
Okay, well then, we're ready.
So that motion is to, I will chair the committees of the whole, and in my absence, I will appoint someone to start the meeting, and then in that meeting, you guys it's your pleasure to elect whoever you want, but I will appoint somebody to start the meeting. That's the motion and the second. Justice Ecke?
Thank you, Judge. And I know this is my third time to speaking, but just to support Justice Pond's thought process, this is what was done in the past. Anytime there was a committee of the whole, it was the county judge that presided over the committees of the whole. I don't know if you remember, Justice Dennis, when that is what happens. So this isn't something new. It is procedurally what we do whenever we have committees of the whole. So thank you.
A motion and second. All in favor? Those opposed? Okay. We've established our leadership. You know, I'm gonna tell you, I like hanging out with you people, so this is just one more opportunity to do that, right? Item number 5 is I just wanted to really quickly go over what we see as the responsibilities of the county. Our newly formed, I guess you would say newly formed Committee of the Whole, we're gonna refer to as County Services. So my vision for that committee, it will handle anything policy-driven that does not touch numbers or amend the budget. Those items will be assigned to the Finance and Budget Committee. Now, of course, we have a wonderful example right here tonight of, you know, the weather gave us the opportunity to be here tonight, and if that's the case, then I think as Committee of the Wholes, each committee can handle the business of the other one. But to keep the business separate and just have a manageable agenda, those are the way we will shepherd you guys' ordinances or discussion items in those two areas, if you will, if that makes sense. And I just wanted to cover with you guys to make sure you're okay with it and make sure there weren't any discussion or questions. So essentially, clear as mud, if it has a financial impact or amends the budget, we're going to move that to the Finance and Budget Committee of the Whole. Essentially, everything else will be County Services Committee of the Whole. So things that were traditionally jails. Now, I guess what the big difference I want to highlight is previously with our other 4 committees, something might touch jails per se, but also have a financial impact, so it would move through both committees. Does that make sense? The way we're thinking about it now is we would only move that item through Finance and Budget. If it has to do with money. Anything policy or ordinance only would move through County Services. That's correct. And so we will do the regular reports that are usually, you know, we have everything tonight, but juvenile detention, sheriff's, criminal justice coordinating committee, we would do all those in County Services traditionally. And then our normal Finance and Budget Committee reports would still be here in this Finance and Budget Committee, so that would be the Treasurer's Report, Employees Insurance, Comptroller. So we can divide up those regularly recurring reports into the different committees, if that makes sense. Are we good with that? Any questions or anything? Okay. Well, we'll keep moving. And so that moves us into our regular monthly reports. And first up is our Director Tinsley with the juvenile detention. Director Tinsley? There's a little man on the bottom right. Can you punch that? There you go. I think you're good.
Thank you, Judge. In the month of January, we had 36 intakes, with the average length of stay being 9.11 days. The average daily population for January is 15.06. The highest number of intakes were battery in the second degree felony at 5. Of the 36 intakes from Washington and Madison County, 23 were from Division 3 and 14 were from Division 8. There were 12 total transports, 5 were law enforcement transports, and 7 were performed by JDC. Are there any questions that I may address at this time?
Questions for Director Tinsley? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Judge. Have a good night.
You too, sir. Next up is the Sheriff's Office activity reports. Sheriff Cantrell? You're on.
Thank you, Judge. 7.1 is our enforcement activity report. Nothing out of the ordinary report on the report that we've submitted. You know, the big thing for us this past month has been the weather. Obviously, you all were affected by the weather just as we were. We were able to get out and help the road department some with some of our detainees going out and cutting limbs out of the road or pulling some brush back that had fallen in the road that gave the road department guys that are skilled in their craft the ability to get in those trucks, get in those plows, get on those graders, and try to get those roads cleared while we used unskilled labor with our detainees to move some of that brush. So I think we had a good partnership, worked good, and we were happy to do that. I'll answer any questions anybody might have about the enforcement report. Major Dinger will come up and talk to you a little bit about the jail activity once I'm finished.
Questions for Sheriff Cantrell? JP Ecke.
I just like saying, hi, Sheriff. What's the attitude of the inmates going out and helping?
Oh, they love doing it. It's a chance for them to get out, outside, and believe it or not, they like doing something that's helpful, that they can get out and do something productive. So it's good therapy for them, and it gets the county some cheap labor.
Sure. Do you foresee any other projects maybe that they can engage in just to?
Well, we pick up
Other-
trash. We pick up
Okay.
trash on Saturdays and other
Yes.
days of the week when we have the people that show up. Yeah, it's there's a lot of things coming up in the spring. We help with the senior center mowing. We go down to the Brentwood Rest area and help keep it maintained. And so a lot of projects that they get to get out and do when the weather permits.
That's good to know. Thank you, Sheriff.
Justice Pond.
Sheriff, I had more of a comment or a compliment than anything else. I appreciate seeing those guys be able to get outside, do a little bit of work occasionally. I kind of miss the times when we had a regular work release facility and a regular program, which all went by the wayside when we had to use that area for quarantine. I'd like to see it come back if we ever got to a place where we could have work release area instead of quarantine. Are we able to do any rehab programs down there as of yet, or is it still too crowded?
Well, it's still too crowded to do much. JP Pond, we're trying to get some programs in, but just to have the space dedicated to have like-minded people come together for whatever the class may be or the program may be is just not possible right now.
I had it pictured that some of that rehab program was happening in the work release area. Is
That's correct. That's correct. It's a minimum to medium security facility that we could utilize for particularly our work release people and our community service, that people that got a 90-day sentence, maybe that's they get 2 for 1 credit if they're out working, but 90 days is 45 Saturdays if they just come in and work on Saturday. That's a long time for somebody to try to make it, but we can send them out to other areas, the road department or Boston Mountain Solid Waste to do some work, cut that time down. They get down to a manageable level, then we can, and they've been cooperative and good detainees, then we can move them out to the work release program where they come in on their own and go out and work a day and get 2 days credit for that, and then get to go home in the evening. But that program's not very strong right now, just because of space constraints and.
I've had the opportunity and the privilege to work beside some of those folks in the past when I'd be doing volunteer work and the work release people would come in, and I've seen those guys work hard all day, and then a deputy would come back and say, okay, guys, maybe they've been out 14 hours. They say, we can go back now if you'd like to, or we can go over here and clean brush in a cemetery. And they jump, oh, we want to go clean brush.
Yeah.
It's just, the attitude is just there.
Yeah,
And,
I think it gives them a chance to feel like they're paying some of their pittance and contributing back.
I wish we could just have all that back. But, and I mentioned to an individual today, I don't think he really appreciated what I had to say, but I told him that the most costly thing that this COVID has created for us, to me, I mean, it's very costly to those detainees, that we no longer have that area for rehab and for work release. That has to be the quarantine facility.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And,
It's,
and getting back some area like that where we can have some 12-step programming and other rehab programming is something that I'd really like to see.
yeah, something we're working towards. So,
Appreciate you.
yep. Thank you.
Justice Coger.
Thank you, and thank you, Sheriff Cantrell. I have a couple of questions. I'm not sure this would be for you or for Major Denzer, but you can let me know.
Sure.
On the report, it says there's 4,512 hours of training for January. Could you speak to that? Just, was that just for officers, for your officers at the detention center? And what kind of training was that?
Well, that's for all employees at the sheriff's office, that training, because we do mandatory racial profiling training. We do mandatory duty to intervene training. That's all due in January. So the first of every year we do that. So every employee has to do that. We've got 8 people in the Law Enforcement Training Academy, and so they're going 10 hours a day up there usually. So all those hours just accumulate to add up to the 4,000 or the 5,000, whatever it is, 4,500 mark. So, but that's all sheriff's office employees, the training that they're all receiving.
Okay, so it's just every year. I noticed it was about the same amount in January of last year, so I didn't realize.
2,200 last year in January and 4,500 this year.
Oh,
Last year, we were kind of coming off the heels of COVID, weren't able to have instructors come in. We were a little more cautious about coming together as a group and training, so this year we've been a lot more active, so.
Okay. And another thing, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like the number of federal prisoners are down about 30. Is that correct?
You know, it's been running in the 50s for the last few months, so.
Okay.
We've
So that's just running, I mean, that's nothing that you've done on your part. That's just how they're coming in.
well, we've asked them to reduce our numbers some.
Okay.
Because we are limited on space. Most of the people that we have on the federal charges are people that have committed a crime in our area, and the federal prosecutor has picked up that case. And so they've prosecuted in federal court versus Matt prosecuting it in state court. So those are people that would be in our jail anyway, just on state charges instead of federal charges.
Okay. The bookings for January, 661 compared to 787 in January of last year, a decrease of 126. Now, do you think that part was, do you have any idea, I mean, has the prosecutor initiated any policy changes or anything, or have y'all?
No,
No.
you know, we're not the biggest contributor to the jail. You know,
Right.
Fayetteville and Springdale are the big contributors. But yeah, the prosecutor, that, to my knowledge, has not instituted any reduction in arrest. I suspect a lot of that's weather-related.
Is-
Weather-related.
Weather, okay.
And then, you know, because we ran our report, is not month to month, because we thought this meeting was going to be held at the very end of January, so the report is not for the whole month of January. It picks up a little bit of December, so we just went a 30-day period on our report, and I don't know the exact dates that we picked, but we picked a 30-day period because we weren't going to get a full month in when we thought we were going to meet January 30th. But here we are meeting on February, so. And, you know, we had the holidays in there, so obviously, typically fewer arrests on the holidays.
Okay.
So I suspect that's just based on the time frame of the report.
Well, that was good to see
Yeah.
because it was
Yeah.
lower that month than it had been. None of
Yeah.
the months last year were that low. So I
Yeah.
keep my fingers crossed
Yeah,
that that continues.
yeah, we'll hope.
On the transportation miles for January, they were doubled from January of last year, out of county transportation miles. Did you have to go all over the country?
All over
several
the country,
times?
yep. Oregon, New York, so, just depends on where they get picked up. That number is fluid, and it moves around month to
Okay.
month based on where the detainees are at. But, it's the sheriff's responsibility to go pick up the felons. Even if Springdale or Fayetteville initiates the warrant, it's the sheriff's responsibility to go pick those up wherever they might get arrested. So we've got one in Alaska right now that we're working to get down here, so. We can't drive up there. For one thing, it's 5,000 miles, and for another, we can't drive across Canada with a firearm. And so we're working with the U.S. Marshals to try to get that person flown back into the continental United States and then pick them up, hopefully in El Reno, but wherever they can get him to.
Okay. And with reference to 309s, are you the one who gets to choose whether we accept 309s, or do you?
Am I personally? No, they send us if we need one, we say we need a 309, and then they send us, this is who we select for you, and then they send him up or her up, whoever it's a male or female. We don't get to select who's in the program. That's something the state does on their level.
Okay, but do you have the option of turning someone down if you wanted to for a 309?
We could turn them down, but then that request might not get filled the next time.
Okay,
So, but they send us a packet, and they've been vetted through the state system. So typically they work out, and then they give us the latitude that if they're here for a month and don't work out, that we can request that they be reassigned to another facility throughout the state. So they're pretty good to work with us.
okay, and today we were conversing on email, and you said there were 124 or 125 state prisoners that were waiting for a place in the
Right, I
ADC.
think there's 96 new commitments to the Arkansas Department of Corrections. Those are new commits to ADC. There are, I think, 12 new commitments to Arkansas Community Corrections.
Okay,
And we've got a pretty good number of parole violators, 25 or 30 parole violators that are waiting for a bed to open up to go back and serve their parole sanction.
okay,
So,
okay, thank you, that's all I have.
Justice Anderson?
I was kind of referring back to what Justice Bond was saying about with the workers and so on. I've had some experience with the workers out at the airports when I was in business out there, that a lot of them are very good workers and they'd like to hire them sometimes afterwards, but is that program still going, that they're sending people there, or they're requesting people to help out there?
to what facility were they
To
sending
the
them to?
airports, either Fayetteville or Springdale?
Yeah, we don't right now send them to the cities. We do send some when we have enough out to Boston Mountain Solid Waste to work out there. We'd like to get back where we can send them to the airport. They're great at lawn care and just labor tasks, unskilled labor. So if we can get the beds to house them, the room, some empty beds, but when we got 140 or 50 people sleeping on the floor, at 130% of operating capacity, it's hard to have space for those lower level offenders. So we're kind of filled with the more serious offenders currently.
Okay, well, thank you.
Any further questions for Sheriff Cantrell before we move to the detention report? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Judge.
Good evening, Major Denzer. You're there now.
All right. Good evening, Judge. I think the sheriff pretty well gave all the whole report, so I don't have much left. But to talk a little bit about 309s right quick, they're part of the ones that went out and helped cut this brush and everything. They'll be here a year, 2 year sentences, but they also do all the mowing, and then the females do all the cooking in both shifts in the jail. So they are a super benefit. Sometimes you might hear a little bit of negative about them, but they are fantastic. And then besides that, we get a little bit of fee that the state pays us for holding them. So if you had to hire, if you had to hire all that, the last time we checked on mowing the grass for the South Campus, it was about $94,000 to mow it for a year, contract. And they do this, every year. So anyway, just to give the 309s they do learn a trade and they really do a good job. So anyway, like I say, like Sheriff said, our report isn't full. I understand, I guess we're gonna go from the 15th to the 15th from now on, so we'll have an accurate 30-day report. So that's why some of these numbers are a little bit off. And like I say, the transport's the biggest thing. I know we got a lot going on tonight, but we'll go into details about a lot of this. Everybody knows, that, like the sheriff said, if they get arrested wherever in Washington County and they run off to everywhere, for some reason, they always get caught in Houston. And we just been to California and Washington. We made a round, just come back from the east side, Florida, and we have to go get them. So that's, that's two people for ever how long, and it sure runs these miles up. It, 33,000. And, this is supposedly the slow time of year. In summertime, it picks up. So it doesn't take long to wear out a car when you're driving that many miles. But, also on transport, they start out, everybody goes to jail that stays and then has to be took to either, Arkansas Department of Corrections or to the doctor or to court or whatever. They do all that and move all these prisoners, all these, last year we had about 10,000. They move them somewhere on top of this extradition outside. So transport is really busy and it's hard to keep up. A lot of times we're borrowing people from other places to go, because we always send 2 officers wherever we go and whatever we do on that part. So 7.2 on 7.3, our pre-trials are, still gaining. I think it shows we had almost 500. Like we used to say, we was always worried about getting to 4, and now we're 5 or 5 over, 500 a few over. A lot of these people that got out and have failure to appears have got arrested again on new charges, and the judges have set a little higher bonds, and so our numbers are going up. So that's part of our increase in our numbers on pretrial. And then like we was talking about, the sheriff was talking about that she was asking him, the ADC, Arkansas Department of Corrections, we did have 84, but community corrections, which is the old RPF, like nonviolent 2-year, you go down there. It's, there's 13 of those. And then parole violated, they got out, got in trouble, come back, there's 28 of those. So that runs up to 125. But if you look down on 7.4 on the very bottom on the white warrants, a white warrant is when you get a parole violator, he comes in, then he turns into a white warrant, and then he turns into parole violator. So we got 33 more basically waiting. Within a week or 2 weeks, they have a hearing. So how fast that number can go up to ADC. So that's that number there. They had a lot of power outages down there last week, and they hadn't took any down in quite a while. So we're hoping to get to send some. And then on 7.5, the bookings, like I said, there's gonna be more bookings than that, but with a full 30 days. But, we released 247, 64 from the OR, from the prosecutor's office that has a set schedule on who we can release. So that's 311 that we turn loose. Because our high count back on this other page was 781. So if you had 781, you kept the 311, you see what number that would be, where we'd be at. But as the sheriff said, we got about 140 on the floor, and I think about 40 of them are females. That number don't seem to change, seem like it's growing. So entertain any questions if you'd have any.
Justice Pond.
I have 2 questions, if I may. And one, and this more out of curiosity, that sometimes I get these notions, are many times these 309s that they send you, do they generally have family in this area or anything?
Usually close. They try to put them somewhere like Fort Smith up in Benton County, so they can see their family. That seems like it helps them out better, because they do get furloughs every 60 or 90 days, and so they can go straight to their family and come back.
So they don't have to go to Texarkana or where else to see
Right.
their family members. And the other question, because it was mentioned that the transport numbers are up, are those, is there a pretty good number of those folks that you have to go after? Are those people that they've bonded out and they take off and go to Alaska or wherever?
Right, they leave and then, you know, usually they're a violent or a crime against an individual of some type. So that's why the prosecutors always wants us to go get them. You know, we don't have a choice. It's a matter of making arrangements. And the hard part, like I say, on this mileage, you know, as far as our cars, we was coming back from California, I think 3 weeks or a month ago, and the transmission went out. And so then you gotta go to a dealership. But the hard part is finding a place to put people. Everybody's full, just like us. They don't wanna house a prisoner. So then we had to send another unit to go get the detainees, and then at the dealership, when you know you're gonna get a good job, but, you know, a $3,500 transmission was about $6,800.
So these people generally, they've bonded out, or a lot of times they have.
Yes,
You gotta
bonded
go
out or-
across
or-
country to get them and bring them back, and they've missed a court date. I mean, so
Yes, usually have a failure to appear on top of
usually
the
that's
original
what
charge.
happens. Okay, just trying to get a really, you know, as whole a picture of this as I can. Thank you.
Justice Fleming.
When you fly somebody, like you were saying, the sheriff was saying about flying somebody out of Alaska, when they get a plane ticket, so I'd say if you send 2 officers, that's gonna be 3 plane tickets. Or is that, does the plane companies, because a lot of them right now is giving real deals, but I don't know about pulling a person out of Alaska.
Right,
that's-
well, usually to fly on a plane with a firearm, you gotta have a class, so you're able to go. And then you gotta get up there and get them and come back, and then there's a lot of restrictions. You know, we're real fortunate this time. Part of this holding the U.S. Marshals, I know sometimes we've been criticized about that, but there's other benefits you get, and they're helping us get this person back, maybe to Oklahoma City even. But they're gonna go from Alaska at least to the United States so we can drive. That's just one of the benefits you get by holding U.S. Marshal prisoners. It doesn't always work that way, but it did this time. So, you know, this was like gonna be about a $12,000 ordeal. And now we got it down to, we might just luck out and have to go to Oklahoma City and get him and bring him back to our facility.
Say though, that if you just flew them from Oklahoma City to Fayetteville, or to Springdale, or Highfield, would that still require 2 officers, and then there
Yes.
again, you might not be able to get guns on, and
Right, you gotta have a certain class and then the guns and it's quite an ordeal to get it done.
so it goes back to, again, it's $10,000 or $12,000 to fly just from Oklahoma City.
Well, if you're just going to Oklahoma City, I mean, we take, as part of the Marshals people over there for them. But maybe the biggest thing is just to get them back in the United States so we can go get them just like a regular person.
I mean, because it's not cheap to put 2 guys in cars and burn all the gas and pay their wages for 2 or 3 weeks to do that.
Right.
Or however long it takes them to get from there to here. You're not gonna go to Alaska in 30 minutes, so.
No, that'd be a long trip.
I'd like to go, but I mean, I don't wanna go in this circumstances,
No, yeah, not right now.
but, okay, thank you.
Justice Coger.
Thank you, Judge, and thank you, Major Dinser. Talking about the FTAs, can you give us a status report on Uptrust? Do you know anything about
I
that?
have to check on it. I've not heard anything about it, but I will find out some information and get it to you.
Okay.
See where we're at.
Okay, and I'm wondering if maybe and I don't know if this is a question for you or for Jack, but would it be possible to get reports like how many are in the jail on a $5,000 bond, a $10,000 bond, $15,000 and $20,000 bonds? Just like maybe, not names, I'm just talking about maybe if it could be included in the report, like we had to have numbers of those people,
Okay, so 5, 10, 15,
15 and 20. Because I
Four
think,
categories?
yes, sir.
Okay,
I mean, if you could check on that, please, I would appreciate it.
all right.
The other question I had was, I know we were talking today, and you said that you have to wait for the ADC to call you, but, you know, it's kind of like sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I mean, do y'all ever just call and just say, hey, we're full, we've got 140 people on the floor, we've got 40 women sleeping on the floor, and is there any way that you could do something to help us out? I mean, is that?
We've always called, because I mean, like I say, when we get this big number,
Right.
and, you know, there's 75 counties, but you can't tell the state anything. They, you know, they call and tell you, and they'll call the day before, and we need 5 or 10 or 20, and you get them ready and go. But, yeah, we do call all the time. You know,
Okay.
especially if we have any ones with any kind of medical problems, or, you know, we talk to them about that, they'll usually take them quicker. But just the regular people, seem like they're really backed up. Of course, the COVID, you know, just like us, we knock on wood, we're great 1 week. The next thing you know, we got, you know, half a dozen positives, and we turn out with 100 exposures, and here we go. Kind of shuts everything down that quick. You know, in 10 days it'll be gone. But the prisons, they've had quite a few issues. Seem like more than us. So when they have that, everything comes to a stop, and then we have to start over. But that's what gets us. You know, if there's a good thing, they do pay $40 a day.
Okay. I was in the Benton County Jail recently, and they don't take 309s because of their overcrowding. I mean,
Right.
I'm just throwing that out there. I mean, I don't know if that's, they said that would take up 2 extra pods because they would have to have the 309 women and the 309 men separated. So they don't take 309s because of that. And one other question, when you were talking about the transport, did you say that those were violent offenders that you went to get?
The prosecutor makes the decision, but that's usually part of it.
Okay.
Is it a violent charges or a person involved or whatever, who we go get? Sometimes, you know, they won't go get them if it's just something that's not really a big deal. But the prosecutor makes a decision on that. We always talk with him about it, and because it comes out of our budget and everything, you know, to go out there and come back.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
JP Lemming?
One more question. We keep talking about 309s, and it's, to me, is there any way you could tell me kind of how much money the 309 saves Washington County in a year's time? I know you mentioned $90,000 a year bid for mowing.
Well, that's just mowing on the one deal, yes.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, what
Well,
kind
the
of
kitchen,
savings would you think?
like you talk about the women in the kitchen, they cook, you know, 3 meals, and there's 10 of them on each shift. So that would be 20 people we'd have to hire to do this cooking for you know, and as the number grows, it gets, you know, even more. Well, these 309s that come in, the guys, you know, besides doing all of the mowing, some of them, they all have a little bit of skill, but some maintenance. We have some helping working on the cars. We got one guy right now that's a really good maintenance guy that helps our other maintenance guy. So there, you know, there's 2 positions right there. But, you know, like the best thing is if something happens like this ice storm, the 309s get out there, they shovel you know, clean everything up, they put the ice down, and, you know, whatever you need, they're there. Just like going cutting the brush, helping the county. You know, some of these people we get back for, you know, they're trying to pay their fines and stuff on. Some of them are not very able to work. These guys are the same way with the women. They've jumped through all the hoops. They went to prison. They did all their, you know, anger management or GED, whatever. They got all these things done to get into programs. So they're really going to make a difference. You know, I think they're really going to be a taxpayer when they get out, when they leave us, because we'll have them 2 or 3 years. So they're get up, go get it done, and what do you want me to do next? That type of thing.
Yeah, because I've been down there, and they sure can decal a car good.
Yeah.
They do nice
well,
work
they
on
have-
detailing and cleaning
Well,
them
they have
up.
hobby crafts that 309 is allowed to do. They can polish boots and they can wash cars, and that's how they make a little bit of money.
Yeah.
But part of the ADC rules and
But
regulations.
in your thinking, in your scribbling some days, just kind of write down a number to kind of give the court how much money them folks actually saves us. Yeah, it cost us money, but why not get some money back out of them?
Well, you know,
And
I think
it's a
they're-
good. I think it's a good program. I think it's a good deal.
Oh, it's a great program, because you couldn't hire people. You know, we're 34 down in the jail right now. We can't even hire jailers. Can you imagine when you have people that you try to hire down there, especially when you hear COVID? You know, that's what's kind of broke this transport back open. COVID's kind of all laid down, and now these people are getting out and getting caught, and we're having to go get them. Everything's, you know, everybody's coming out. So, all right, sure, we'll get a number rounded up.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your hard work.
Thank you, Major Genzer.
Yes, sir.
Oh. Justice Ecke?
Point of professional order. I'd like to remind our colleagues that there are 30 items on this agenda, and if we can just call and ask for the information, if this is just personal information, can we just, out of courtesy for everybody that's in line to speak, can we just cut it short?
Thank you, Justice Ecke.
Thank you.
Next up is the Criminal Justice Coordinating Report. Coordinator Smith?
Thank you, Judge. So the top half of the report in your packet is Washington County specific. One thing that I would point you to is our October failure to appear clinic, where we had 1 plea and 11 continuances. Our next failure to appear clinic is February 21st, and so we will have new numbers for that next month. And we will also be doing those every 3 months throughout the year. The Fayetteville Police Department had 85 deferrals total in and of itself, and you can see the details there. And the CSU diversions, they had 47 referrals. And returning home in December had 13 intakes, 1 discharge, and 2 absconds. Any questions?
Questions for Coordinator Smith? Justice Koger?
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I think you turned your microphone off. There you go, red's hot.
Okay, so when it says, I saw somewhere, it's 25, or maybe this says 26 provider visits. Could you explain what that is? What is a provider visit compared to the sick visits and the psych call visits?
My understanding, and the Sheriff's Department could specify, but my understanding is those are your regular visits where they are not sick per se, but if you would have like an annual visit, I can ask the Sheriff's Department if that is. Do you know? Provider visits versus sick calls? Yeah. No, I have the number, but do you know the difference? I can ask the medical staff at the jail.
Okay. And when we mentioned there were 316 sick call visits and 215 psych call visits, does that mean that everybody who submitted a request for a sick call or a psych call was seen?
I'm not sure if that's everyone, but that's how many they saw.
That's how many they saw? Okay. So we don't know if that was everyone that requested it. Okay. And could you explain the difference between the mental health, and maybe you've done this before and I just don't remember, the difference between the mental health police officer referral and the CSU diversions?
So for the Fayetteville Police Department, they have their own crisis intervention team, which is abbreviated CIT, and they do their own deferrals either directly to Northwest or to the CSU, and so sometimes they do send them to the CSU and refer them to the CSU, but because the CSU is a county-wide resource, they don't send all of their deferrals to the CSU.
Okay. Under the, maybe I'm going to make sure I'm understanding this. This is number of referrals, 47. Number of admissions to the unit, 13. So that means out of the 47 that referred, only 13 were admitted? Am I understanding that?
For the CSU?
Yes.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. I think that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Additional questions for Coordinator Smith? Thank you, ma'am.
Yep.
We will now move to our, what would typically be our finance and budget monthly reports. Treasurer Bobby Hill. Good evening, Treasurer Hill.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is that on? Good. Red is hot. Good evening, Court. Hope you're all doing well today. 9.1, It's my treasurer's financial report for the month of January. You look at the first line, general fund, began with 12.2 million in the bank and ended with 12.5, so revenues are a little ahead of expenditures. We got shorted a little bit on our property tax relief that came in, but we will get the money. It just didn't, it was a couple of $100,000 short compared to last year, but it will come in. Road and jail, 2,000 road, 3017 jail operations. They began and ended about the same, so we did well for January. Look at the second page for all the new guys and gals. The quorum court goes from 1,000 to 4,800 radio system sales tax. That's usually your domain for budgeting. 6,000 and down is more of a distribution, pass-through accounts, like cities and schools. That's how we pay them their tax money. But the end of this report started 99 million in the bank, and we ended with 99 million. So, in county government, that's not bad. 9.2, this is the American Rescue Plan obligation and expenditure report. Again, for the new guys, we received 46.5 million over the past 2-year period. We've expended 30 million of that. Obligations 42 million, so we have about 4 or 5 million remaining to be obligated. 9.3, this is the 1 cent sales tax. It says Washington County share. That's because we share it with the cities based on population. Currently, Washington County's share is 16.5 or 16.47% of the 1 cent. To be even more confusing, of that 16.47%, 60% goes to general fund, 40% goes to road fund. Now, quorum court can tweak that number if general might need a little extra money that we're thinking for the year. They could make it 70-30, 80-20, or if road needed more money, you might make it 50-50. I mean, you do have options, but historically we've done 60-40. And we did, for the actual numbers, we're almost 8% above last year at this time. 861,000 came in. 9.4, quarter-cent sales tax. This is not shared. 100% of this does go to the jail. 1.3 million came in this January compared to 1.2 last year. Again, it's about almost 8% increase. Also, it says January, but collections are 2 months. Well, it's collected in November. We'll get it in January. The Christmas month of December, which is always a big month, that will come in next month, February. 9.5, the half-cent state sales tax. This is not local tax. It's the half-cent tax on all purchases you make. Everybody in the state pays this, and that half-cent is divided 70% state, 15% cities, 15% counties. And that 210,000 up there is our share of that 15%. And it was almost 10% above last year. So doing well on sales tax. 9.6, threw this in there just, it's the year ending 2022. Had a good year last year. Almost all the major funds were well above, revenues were well above expenditures. Look at that first line. General fund says 40 million revenues and 39 in expenditures, but actually it's 36 in expenditures because 3 million of that went to the line below it into the general reserve fund. And over the last 4 years, we built it up to $14 million. And just in case, that is general money. We just separated it out. If we run short, it's available. Final page of that report, 88 million we began with 88 million. 2022, we ended at 99 million. Finally, 9.7 is the county general fund property taxes received. This is the 2022 report. You see, we brought in 17.5 million compared to 16.3 the year before. and I'm expecting we'll probably get close to 19 million in 2023. We're currently at 4.4 mills. The quorum court can vote to increase this up to 5 mills. And it's not part of this report, but the road millage is 1.1, library millage is 1. I know there's lots of numbers. You're always free to come by to see me, call me, email. I'm usually pretty easy to get along with. Most of the time. Any questions?
Questions for Treasurer Hill? Justice Coger?
Thank you. I have one question, Treasurer Hill, and thank you for your report. It's very detailed, and I appreciate that. When you were talking about the ARPA money, could you speak? I noticed on the premium pay, there's like what was allocated and what was expended. There's like over, what, 1 point something million. Could you explain, I mean, what's going to happen to that money?
As far as I know, unless something else comes up, premium pay is over. The total expense was that 7.286. So that obligation will go back, that 1 million difference will go back into the obligation pool. We just probably need an ordinance to clean all that up.
Okay. I was just curious about that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further questions for Treasurer Hill? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Employee insurance report, Mr. Angel?
Good evening. There's a lot more folks here this time. I kind of like this. We didn't meet in January, if memory serves, so I'll do a brief recap on last year. If we can remember all the way back to our meeting in early December, I'd predicted we would have a fairly high claims month in December, because we always do. Folks have met their deductible a lot of times. They're trying to get in that last procedure. It's just kind of the norm in our business. And we did have a high month. It was our second highest month of the year. So ended on a low point there with expenditures, what we always do on these insurance plans. So that's, nothing out of the ordinary. Moving right along to the good news, January was a very good month for our plan. If you move to the second attachment, you'll see our beginning balance. We were all the way down at 2.4 million in our reserve account. For those of you who've sat through these meetings with me before, you know I'm a little conservative. I like to keep $3 million in our reserve account. It's probably a little high. Some of my coworkers think that's a little high, but I just always like to make sure we're covered. And if you go all the way down to our ending balance, it's at $3.159 million. So that makes me comfortable that we're going to be just fine for another year, as long as we can keep that at that $3 million level. We're obviously a self-funded plan, but we have reinsurance on the back of this, so there's stop loss. So the county's attachment point's 125% of expected claims. There's just no way we wouldn't be able to get through that without our stop loss attaching and us being able to move into 2024. So I can take questions on that as needed, but first I'd like to talk a little bit, if it's okay, Judge, about some of the new contracts that we entered into for 2023. JTS Financial's been your consultant for about a year. As a matter of fact, it was 12 months ago, I think almost to the day, that I came for the first time to this meeting. And one thing we said is we really wanted to look at the pharmacy benefit management side, the PBM side of it, and try to get higher pharmaceutical rebates as we move forward. And I'm proud to say we were able to do that. We still stayed with Caremark, so same pharmacy benefit manager, but we're able to negotiate a much better contract. When you look at it, what we did is we took all of the claims for a one-year period between 7/1/2021 and June 30 of 2022. And we said, okay, if we filled all the prescriptions that were filled through that 12-month period on this new contract versus the old contract, how much more would we have gotten in pharmacy rebates? And the answer was $232,000. So you can't project forward and say, oh, we will get another $232,000 next year, because we don't know what prescriptions will be filled. But it's a pretty good way to look at contracts and compare them when we can go back to actual data from a rolling 12-month period and figure out that we would be up 40% in pharmaceutical rebates. So I'm very pleased with that contract. Our other fixed costs, we were actually able to negotiate slight decreases in those as well, $39,000 and change. less on our fixed costs, which is our TPA services and renting our network, things like that, just the other pieces of a self-funded medical plan. So I believe we're at a much better spot moving forward into 2023 than we were moving into 2022. Obviously, the wild card here is always claims. We can't predict claims. There's not a whole lot we can do to control claims. In some ways, there are, and we're trying to do that with stronger contracts, things like that. But we never know how many folks are going to, God forbid, get cancer or get in a car wreck, things like that, to hit these shock claims. But I think we've got ourselves in a good spot contractually, so hopefully we'll have an even better year in 2023.
Questions for Mr. Angel? Justice Lemming.
Thank you, Chair. I've had a lot of county employees talk to me about their insurance. I know we've changed providers, and a lot of them's, you talk about pharmacy, this money you're talking about savings, does it go to the employee, or that just goes to, that just rebates for who?
For the county, the total plan, the
For the
county's,
county, not the people that's buying the medicine.
correct. The rebates go back to the self-funded medical plan itself.
So it comes back to the county and it gets back in the pool.
Yes, sir.
So the county employees that's out there paying, there's a lot of them I've talked to, is some of their drugs, they went from, you know, $50 to $300, $400, and they're not happy at all with it.
Well, we did.
Does that make sense, or is
It does, it does. I don't know how many we have. I can't speak directly to it without knowing the drug. But we did stick with the same pharmacy benefit manager, which means the same formulary. Now, with any formulary, things change from year to year, just like doctors being in network. And I can tell you one drug that we're seeing a lot of right now that folks had been wanting, there were some type 2 diabetes shots that could be taken. You probably see a lot of them advertised on television. And one thing I always tell all of my clients is, if you've heard of a drug, it's expensive. And it flat out is. So there are several that are being advertised on television now, and they were being used for weight loss. And we saw a lot of formularies take those off, unless you are diabetic, starting 1/1 of this last year. I've taken one call about that at this county already, and I can tell you those shots, this particular one, was $500 per injection. And a lot of people were taking those weekly for weight loss, but this person was a type 2 diabetic, so it was not a problem. That continued on at the copay level. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but that's one we're seeing a lot.
$500 cheap. My daughter takes some medicines at $68,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a hard time getting the hospitals and getting the doctors. She and about 8 or 9 people in this whole United States do this, and it's very crazy. But a lot of the county employees is really griping about the insurance and griping about their medical, their prescriptions. They're having a lot of trouble with that, and I think we need to get our P's in the right order. If it's more about profits for it to look good on paper, I think we need to give it back to our people instead of getting rebates back to the county's $4 million that we're looking at. Let's get it back to the people if there's any way in the world we can do that.
Well, allow me to maybe go down that path a little further with you. Those rebates go back to the medical plan. If you're fully insured, Blue Cross, United Healthcare, whoever you're fully insured with, just keeps them. If you're self-funded, they go back to the employer. Then what the employer chooses to do with that money has nothing to do with me or Blue Cross and Blue Shield. That would totally be up to, I assume, this room.
Well,
That money does go back to the
I
county.
think all insurance companies across this country, not just Blue Cross Blue Shields, I think all of them are run by mafia, and they're stealing money from all of us poor people. I just believe that, and this country needs to turn that around and change it somehow, because it's not fair. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And I will say to that point that the rising cost of healthcare is out of control. If I could fix that, I'd probably be sitting in Washington, not here. But the costs have gone up exponentially. I do want to touch on one more point, Judge, if it's okay. We were able to strengthen our health plan in a few areas. Now, obviously, we start talking about $70,000 drugs. we are at the mercy of the PBMs and at that point, because you have a drug that only one manufacturer can make. And that's way out of any of our control, unfortunately. It's just the way the legal system works on those trademarks. But on our generic drugs, we were able to lower the copay for our employees from $15 last year to $5 this year. So if they're going to get a generic drug, it's a drop in the bucket compared to the numbers you and I are talking about. But we were able to do something to help them on that. And another thing is specialty visits with our health plan in 2022. Those went directly to deductible and coinsurance. And we were able to move those to a copay this year of, bear with me, I believe it's $60, but whatever it is, less than that going to deductible and coinsurance. Because as you know, when someone goes through something that goes to deductible, they pay 100% until they get there. So those were two ways where we're able to strengthen the plan for this year as well.
Thank you, sir. Justice Coger, just a second, Mr. Angel.
Oh, thank you. One question. Does our plan cover things like silver sneakers and gym memberships for employees? Our county plan?
What, gym memberships, and what was the first thing?
Silver sneakers. It's for older people to go to gyms to take, you know, exercise classes and all.
I see. That is not something that would traditionally be covered in a health plan. But again, the county is self-funded, so we can make whatever decisions we want to make. That's one of the great
Okay.
things about being self-funded. I would warn you, if we went down that path, it's not something that would count towards our stop loss, but again, it would be a very small number. So really what we'll be talking about there would be an expanded wellness program.
Right.
Which Judge Deakins and I talked about last month, and we're considering expanding that with maybe some of these dollars that we're getting in savings, and I would not be against that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Angel. Comptroller's report. I would like to take a special time to recognize our interim director, Jennifer Hinkle, who's been such a trooper with us through late last summer all the way through the budget process. She's ready to shuck that title. And I'd also like to take a moment to introduce our new comptroller, Mr. Wayne Story back there. He brings a lot of experience to the county, and he just started this week, so everybody be nice and let's not scare him off on his first week, okay? So with that, yeah, good job. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Okay, so I believe in your packet, we finally got the unappropriated, so we'll start with that one. And since many of you are new, and the treasurer can correct me if I get the starting balance wrong, but those first numbers are coming from the budget summaries that mostly the treasurer prepares with the projected carryover, projected revenue, less the 10% holdback, and less the 2023 budget appropriations are those beginning numbers. Correct, Bobby? Okay. So in January, we only had just a small handful of ordinances, and over on the far right, it explains what they were. There was a couple new positions that were created, and then a few ARPA that just went from ARPA fund to ARPA budget. So they haven't been spent as far as I know. Is there any questions on this report?
Questions for interim comptroller Hinkle? One more time, just one more time.
Last time. Don't go anywhere, Wayne. So, okay, and our other report is our monthly expenses by fund and department. Basically, the far right column is actual percentages. In a perfect world, if everybody spent their monthly expenses, their same expenses were month to month exact, we'd be about at 8.3%. That's generally not how a lot of them work. For example, Fund 1000 down to general services shows 35.64. They have a large bill they pay in January once a year. So those things aren't alarming, and there's a couple that are 100%. It's one bill for the year, it's done. So these all look really good for January, but if you have any questions, throw them at me. Last chance. So.
Any questions? Thank you so much once again for your work and being patient with us in our search. We appreciate you so much. Thank you, ma'am. All right, now to the meat of the meeting. run on to our new business. First up tonight, we have a resolution designating the persons in succession to fill the vacancy in the office of sheriff on an interim basis until such time as the vacancy is filled pursuant to Arkansas law. You can see here that this is a resolution that we need to pass. Sheriff Cantrell has designated his replacement should he be incapacitated for any time. I also have to do this as county judge, and I do that through executive order. I have not done that yet, but I'll get on that. That's just FYI. J.P. Ecke.
Are these resolutions, we should have done a consent agenda, to go to the full quorum court for
That's correct.
approval?
That's correct, and we can review the consent agenda at the end of the meeting if we'd like to see if we want to add items to it.
Okay, then I make a motion for us to pass this on to the full quorum court with a past due recommendation.
Okay,
consent
motion to
agenda.
pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Ecke, second by J.P. Lemming. Any further discussion or questions on this item? Seeing none, public comments? Seeing none, we'll take up the question. I have a motion to pass item number 12 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Ecke, second by J.P. Lemming. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item number 12 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 13, a resolution is expressing support for the Tunnel to Towers Foundation's 9/11 Never Forget mobile exhibit to visit Washington County. We have our Veteran Service Office Director, Ben Dykes, here this evening. Director Dykes, would you just like to give a quick introduction to what this program is? We sent you, each of you justices, an email about this previously, but I'd like to give Director Dykes a quick second to talk to this issue.
Yes, sir. The Tunnels to Towers Foundation was obviously created out of the events that happened on 9/11. For my generation and for many of you, you all know where you were at that moment whenever the Twin Towers were hit. I was in London, England, working at the U.S. Embassy. It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Never felt more helpless than watching my own country be attacked, right? 2,000 miles away. 4 months later, I was boots on the ground in Iraq, as many other people were. Many military careers were started because of 9/11. There were many military careers that were ended abruptly because of 9/11. Many people joined law enforcement and Sheriff Cantrell's department because of 9/11. I wasn't here in the United States to witness the amount of patriotism that happened on 9/12 and the days ensuing, but I've heard recruiting stations were wrapped around the corner or wrapped around the block. This foundation not only recognizes military, law enforcement, first responders, emergency services, ambulance drivers, nurses, emergency room personnel. It recognizes all of them. 95 cents out of every dollar is fundraised is used back in the foundation. They build adaptive housing for veterans and first responders. They also pay off the mortgages for widows of first responders. What this does, it brings a trailer, a 83-foot trailer here to the county. I've already secured a location, the Northwest Arkansas Mall. The general manager there is a veteran. And the owners of the mall are from New York City. So they were obviously heavily impacted. They've offered to provide space for this. The fundraising is going to take about $25,000 to bring that here. It'll be the first time it's ever been to Arkansas. And what it is, and not only do they bring the trailer, but they have 6 firefighters that were in the towers on that morning. And they come and work as, host for that and answer questions. It is for educating the youth that maybe this isn't covered. It's also to provide healing and also some closure. There are many people in rural parts of Arkansas who have never had the opportunity to travel to New York City and see the memorial there. As you know, we're the host county for the VA hospital. The VA hospital sees about 70,000 veterans from all the neighboring states. Talking with Miss Jackie Eaton, we had a conference call with her. When this rolls into town, there are people following it for miles, and there are people coming from all across all the neighboring states to come do this. The economic impact that it could have for the county is huge. It will just showcase our county. I mean, it's a win-win. This is our generation's Vietnam Wall, to say the least. And we would just like to bring it here to the county and host it and showcase what we're all about, what the county's all about, and just offer that opportunity for people that may not know the weight of what exactly it is. And I just want to, I don't want to use taxpayer money. I would love to be able to fundraise. I'm not a fundraiser. I was a Navy diver. I go find treasure on the bottom of the ocean. I can't find it, you know, in the community. So any help I could have or guidance, I would love to have that, but I would love to bring it to the county and invite all of you out to obviously attend and showcase what we're all about.
Thank you, Director Dykes. Yes, it's a wonderful opportunity for us to showcase our county, our region, our Veteran Service Office, and then, of course, our veterans and our first responders. So I appreciate you bringing this project up, and I hope we can get the
Yes, sir.
the support we need to get it here.
I put a card with each packet, and there's a pin with my number, the office number. If you have any questions, you give us a call. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
JP Ecke.
Judge, it is my honor to make a motion to pass this resolution to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
Thank you.
I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court by JP Ecke, second by JP Anderson. Justice Anderson, do you have further comment?
Yeah, I was just gonna make a comment. You were mentioning what, your effect of that. My wife lost 3 people in that. One of them was a stewardess, and another was a couple that left out of Boston, Boston. I'll get it out in a minute. So it can reach home and reach locally.
This
also.
brings a lot of healing. There's a lot of homes around the country that have a vacant spot at a dinner table because of what happened.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by JP Ecke, second by JP Anderson. Justice Koger?
I just have one question, and maybe I missed it. Did you say when it would be here, what the dates were?
It's in May.
May?
We've got the dates blocked off. I think it's May 18th to the 21st.
18th through 21st.
Okay,
And I
thank you.
believe that's a Thursday through Sunday.
It is, yes, sir. And the whole goal is, at that time of the year, there's a lot of schools that are taking students on field trips. And I want to reach out and touch all the schools in the community, the superintendents, to let them know that this is something that, you know, maybe it isn't taught in the classroom as much.
Yeah, sure, that's great. Thank you.
Justice Ecke?
Thank you, Judge. What can we do to help you as individual JPs on the court?
I look at
What do you
every
need from
individual
us?
as a snowflake. I'm a snowflake. I've got my network of individuals that I know is individual, and each one of you know different people that may overlap but may not be the same. And if I can just reach out and, for lack of a better term, get in touch with them and talk to them and emotionally blackmail them into donating, that's what I would love to do.
Okay, well then
And I
let's
have no
network.
problem doing it.
Let's network. Thank you.
Any further discussion or questions for Director Dykes? Any public comments?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Justice Rios Stafford?
Yes, ma'am.
And I may have missed this in there. With the exhibit coming on the 18th, and we're now in February, what would be the fundraising deadline in order to secure this?
I wish I knew that. I'm not a fundraising guy. I don't know. But I had lunch with a couple of people today, and so I need to raise $25,000 is what I would ideally like to do. And today they said that they would give me 10% of that, about $2,500. So that's day one, first lunch. And they bought lunch, so there you go.
I will just add to that, the Tunnel to Towers organization's being very flexible with us.
That's what I was
We
wondering.
need to raise 25% of that as quickly as we can to book the dates and make them feel comfortable about.
Like a deposit, I
blocking
think.
those up. Yeah, a deposit.
Right, right.
So, not a hard deadline, yesterday. That
Okay.
kind of thing, as soon as possible.
Okay,
The phone call
that's what
we
I was
had-
wondering.
25% of deposit is what we need to raise it, try to raise immediately.
Okay.
The phone call we had with the judge, they will be traveling, they're in Connecticut. They're gonna be traveling into Kentucky with this truck, or the trailer, and we would be the next stop en route, so it alleviates some of the cost from them coming all the way down.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Any further discussion or questions? Public comments on this? Okay, we'll take up the question. I have a motion to pass to full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by JP Ecke, a second by JP Anderson. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item number 13 will move to the full quorum court.
I put my card on each one of those packets. Please give that to someone that you think would be willing to donate. Thank you. Have a good night. Appreciate you.
Item number 14, an ordinance creating the September 11th Exhibit Fund for 2023. This is creating the account that we would collect the money into, and then we would disperse that. We want to have a separate account to collect the money and then, of course, pay it out. And so that's what this ordinance here does. Justice Ecke.
I'd like to make a motion to pass the ordinance creating the September 11th Exhibit Fund 6410.
I have a motion to pass the full quorum court with the due pass recommendation by J.P. Ecke, a second by J.P. Ricker. Any further discussion or questions on this? Any public comments? Oh, I'm sorry. Justice Coger?
Well, I have just one question. So when we talk about local citizens, is it going to be like we can donate, which I'm glad to see, we can go donate like by Cash App or Venmo or something like that? Is that what it's going to be?
Well, we'll try to be as flexible as we can. You're taking us in a new realm of technology there. But we're not that far there yet, Justice Coger. But we'll take that as a very
I
good
just think that
suggestion.
would be good because a lot of young people.
Yes.
do- Not that I'm young.
I hear
but-
you.
Okay.
That's, I think that's, yes, sir, yes. Any further questions? Public comments? Okay, I have a motion to pass, item number 14, the full quorum court with the due pass recommendation by J.P. Ecke, second by J.P. Ricker. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item number 14 will move to the full quorum court with the due pass recommendation. Item number 15, an ordinance appropriating the total amount of $14,938.24 from the unappropriated reserves in the general fund to the various line items in the comptroller's budget. Earlier, you heard me introduce our new comptroller, Mr. Rain Story. He brings some pretty vast experience in both counting and leadership to our county. In our negotiations, we agreed to give Mr. Story a salary up to the first quartile of that range. Last year, when we passed the budget is passed to the minimum of the range, and so these additional dollars would supplement that salary to bring him in, which is what I think is very commiserate with his experience. Justice Ecke?
As a former personnel chairman, I make a motion to approve item number 15.
Okay, got a motion to pass the full court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Ecke, second by J.P. Lyons. Any further questions or discussion on this matter? Justice Lemming?
What's the grand total of that? I think in the budget it was 106.
No, I believe in the budget, it was budgeted at 91,000. This
Okay.
would bring that to about 109,000.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion or questions? Public comments? Okay, I have a motion to pass the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Ecke, a second by J.P. Lyons. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item number 15 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 16, an emergency ordinance calling a special election on the question of the levy of annual dues of the Tawnytown Volunteer Fire Department for fire protection services and prescribing other matters pertaining thereto. The Tawnytown Volunteer Fire Department is wanting to take their dues to a vote of the people. That's one of our responsibilities as a quorum court to approve that and put it on the ballot. Justice Ricker.
I'll make a motion to pass that on to the full quorum court.
I have a motion to approve to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Ricker, second by J.P. Lyons. Any further discussion or questions on this item? Public comments? All right, we'll take up item number 16. I have a motion to pass the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ricker, second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item number 16 will move to the full quorum court. Item number 17, an ordinance recognizing revenue and appropriating expenditures in the amount of I'm off a whole scale. In the amount of $1,701,407.13 in the 3526 Rental Assistance ERA2 Grant Fund for 2023. As you guys know, I think we sent some email in the background. We received emergency rental assistance as the county to distribute that from the federal government. It came in two tranches, Emergency Rental Assistance 1, and then there was a follow-up program, Emergency Rental Assistance 2. We have distributed and used all of our Emergency Rental Assistance 1. We have this $1.7 million in Emergency Rental Assistance number 2. Now, when those programs initially came out, the parameters were very strict on what you could use them for. Short-term support for utilities, rental, or mortgages. Since we've progressed a little bit outside the pandemic, those stipulations have opened up quite largely. And so what we've done, we have Executive Director Mr. Webster here from the Accelerate Foundation, and what we're proposing to do is we use this remaining funds to invest in some affordable housing construction that his foundation can come and help us support and get off the ground. And I would invite the Executive Director up here if you want to make some introductory comments on this and try to give some background. You do a much better job at it than I do.
All right. Thank you, Judge Deakins and JPs. So I'm Jeff Webster. I lead Accelerate Foundation. I've been before you in the past. So what this program is, just as Judge Deakins said, it started out both for Pulaski County, Washington County, and Benton County, really for rental and utility assistance. And then in ERA 2, which Judge Deakins mentioned, it was broadened so that you could use it also for two things: actual affordable housing construction, as well as helping organizations that help with housing stability. So as you may know or remember, all of that work for Benton County, our foundation did through our HARC organization. We distributed over $14 million in Benton County, so we did all the federal audits, all the single audits, all of the reporting, all of that for Benton County. So we're pretty good at how to handle those types of things. Secondly, you may not know us as much for this, but we're very involved in affordable housing in construction. Not us as a foundation doing the construction, but really pulling different people in the community together. For projects, these projects oftentimes make use of federal tax credits, so it's called a low-income housing tax credit. Some of you may be familiar with that. It's called a LIHTC program. You may have read a press release probably about a year and a half ago. We helped the community raise $40 million to purchase those tax credits. So RS Bank, Bank OZK, a lot of the big organizations in Northwest Arkansas. It was really we were only the third state in 50 years to pull off a regional fund. It's our challenge, it's our problem, and we should be able to do that as a community. So we help coordinate that activity. We've also helped specific projects. You may be aware, and you've heard of the project out, it's called Cobblestone Farm, so out Weddington direction. We helped pull that project together, had New Heights Church donate the land, and a lot of other people involved with that, including accessing the developers that know how to access those funds. So we have a lot of experience with that. And the last thing I'd say as far as our experience, we kind of had the privilege of serving as the chair of Mayor Orman's Affordable Housing Work Group across the last year. We just issued a whole report on that. So my point on that is just, if you don't know our foundation in this space, we do quite a bit of this work. So what we would do with these funds is basically we become a subrecipient of that. We actually have the presentation. I'll hold off on that unless you guys want me to run through some of that. But we'd be a subrecipient, and in that sense, in that presentation, the federal government came out with a how-to guide on how you do this, how you make use of this, so we're very familiar with it. We'd basically run a small RFP process and then identify the developer. The big thing, that $1.4 million, what we do is probably our foundation, we probably put about double of that ourselves into this. But what that does is, through that LIHTC program, it would bring about $18 million at least on top of your money. So you think about leveraging your money into a big program. A typical example of this would be right now, fair market rent for two-bedroom apartment is about $1,500 a month. This would lower those rents for those people by about $750 a month. And the amazing part about these programs, you think $750 a month times 150 units, times 35 years, that's how long the federal government keeps this in place, times all of those people in there, it's about a $47 million impact for the county if we do these kind of projects. So we know how to do this. There's developers in the state of Arkansas that have proven track record that we've worked with. So that's kind of what these projects are about. I'll maybe stop there and let you ask me questions as far as around any of that.
Justice Lemming?
Thank you, Chair. Percentage of cost, what's the cost? What's y'all's fee? What's your cost?
Oh, our cost as far as the foundation?
Yeah, the 1.7 million, What percentage is that y'all gonna, you're gonna have to get paid somehow?
Yeah, no, we don't. Well, we're a foundation, and so we'll take zero administrative costs. When we did all of the work that we do in the community, we really never charge the community an administrative cost ever. Yeah.
So you work for free?
Well, we have an endowment, our foundation, about $160 million. And so we give grants out, we give away money, so we don't need to make money off the county and that type of thing, yeah.
Thank you.
Justice Coger.
So that was sort of my question too. So all of this 1.7 million will go to the housing?
Yeah, so just the way the government will allow things, 1.4 of it can go into housing, and then the remaining 300,000 and quote change, it's a little over 300,000, would go towards organizations within Washington County that help with housing stability. So we can't use more than 1.4 of it for the actual construction. The other part has to go into organizations that help. So it could be helping with rental eviction, so it could be legal aid. It's just other organizations that help with counseling, if you will, around that. And maybe, well, how would we figure that out? So you all know that we run the HARC organization. And we've already looked, there's about 10 categories that the government identifies that can help with housing stability. And we've looked across those categories, and we've probably made about 13,000 referrals to help people in those various categories. So we look at, so the community's telling us what are the big needs. Is it for housing counseling? Is it for eviction? Is it for people with domestic violence that need housing, et cetera? The community is essentially telling us that by looking at the data. So we can prioritize what are the big categories, what are the organizations that have really come through and developed and delivered for people, and then prioritize the dollars across that. So that's how we do that part of it.
Okay, I really wanted to see your presentation, but maybe you could email it to us or something, and we could watch it before the full quorum court meets?
Sure, and I'd be certainly happy to do one-on-one if anyone would be interested, and I can do that as well. Yep.
I think we should. I mean, it's a lot of money we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And one other question I have, is it fair to say that I'm not sure I understand, do you subcontract out then to the developers? Is that a fair assessment of how it will work?
I wouldn't really say we subcontract. What you have to do is run a RFP process to arrive at who the developer is. And so we would run that process, and then all the subcontract underneath in terms of who does the dirt work, concrete, all of that is actually taken on by the developer.
And these will be rental units, not
Yes.
home ownership?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Justice Dennis.
Thank you, Judge. I had questions about it myself, and so I was inquisitive about it, and my gracious, I sent one email to them, and I got more information than I thought I could ever read. And there was, open, transparent, exactly how much money they have, how much money they started the year with, how much money they ended the year with, how much money they spent it, or they spent it for. I thought, my gracious, this is more detailed than I've ever seen any report. And so I was very impressed with that. A lot of you know Monique Pierre. She spoke very highly of them. She said everything is top notch, done perfectly well. And I've asked a few other people, and you just got all the recommendations in the world from the people I asked. So I'd move that we, can I just call it number 17 and move it on to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation?
I have a motion to pass to full quorum court, but with the due pass recommendation by Justice Dennis, second by Justice Lemming.
And thank you. Wow.
Yeah, great. Yep.
Justice Anderson.
Just a quick question. Who do I ask to find out how this money is dispersed? As an example, I've had a landlord come to me and saying, well, the money was dispersed to the renter and then it never got to him. And consequently, he never saw the money. And so the question is, what's the proper procedure that should have been done?
Well, so I'll answer a little bit on that from a Benton County standpoint. I really can't speak, because what you're asking in that sense is kind of a Washington County question, and we weren't, our foundation didn't do the distribution within Washington County. Up in Benton County, we would always make that payment to the landlord on behalf of that person, so that we made sure that person was credited for it. It's hard for me to know exactly how the process
I
worked here in
guess my
Washington County.
question is, who would I ask in this county here?
My office can help you answer that.
Okay, thank you.
I will say that unfortunately, with a lot of programs, there has been fraud in this, and I think there's several layers of government looking into that right now. So we'll get you as much as we can on that,
Okay,
Justice Anderson.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Justice Coger.
I'm sorry, I did miss one question that I had for you. Is HARC or Accelerate, are you all certified as a community housing development organization?
So like Fayetteville Housing Authority, like that?
Just, it's a certification, like contractors get certified, I mean, builders get certified. It's
Yes.
just, it shows expertise in housing.
Yeah, so we're not certified in that sense, but that's a little bit why I talked about what we've done for the community and our experience in what we have done.
Thank you. That's all I have.
I'll just wrap this up, the discussion, by saying this is an incredible opportunity for us to have a long-term impact in Washington County. The press should really pick this up. I can't tell you how many dozens of questions I got called and answered about the seal. We put out this press release that has lasting impacts for our county, and I've gotten not one call. So this is something that you guys as justices can help us promote and make sure that the people of Washington County know what an opportunity this is. So with that, any public comments? Justice Coger.
I'd still like to see the presentation at some point.
He will email it to you.
And for any of you, we've done this on various things in the past. I'd be happy to sit down with any of you and go through things one by one if you have questions, et cetera, as well. Yep.
That'd be excellent. Public comments? All right, with that, we'll take up item number 17. We have a motion to pass item number 17 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Dennis, a second by J.P. Lemming. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item number 17 will move to the full quorum court. Item number 18, an ordinance appropriating the amount of $50,000 from the unappropriated reserves in the general fund to the vehicles line item for the county coroner budget for 2023. Every year, it seems like we have some cleanup from our budget process. Last fall, Coroner Morris had some vehicles in his budget request, and he agreed to lower that request and break those up over a couple years. He found one last year that we appropriated and he bought last year, and he was supposed to have an additional $50,000 in his budget that just it did not end up getting in his budget, and so this ordinance reappropriates this money. Justice Ecke?
Judge, I'd like to make a motion to pass item number 18 and on the consent agenda to the full quorum court for due pass.
I have a motion to pass item number 18 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. I believe I had a second by Justice Lyons. Is that correct, sir? Okay. Okay. Any further discussion or questions? Justice Lemming.
I'd like to know how many cars he has and how many people he has now.
Okay. I would welcome you to email Coroner Morris about that.
I'll find out. Thank you.
I will say that Coroner Morris called me this afternoon and said he had a conflict with this meeting, but if he had to, he could make it. And I told him I think we could get this finished. So if him not being here is my fault, if that's a concern. So, discussion or questions? Public comments. I have a motion to pass item number 18 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Ecke, second by J.P. Lyons. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item number 18 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 19, an ordinance appropriating the amount of $6,517.41 from the unappropriated reserves in the county library fund to various line items in the library budget for 2023. Director Audrain has brought this ordinance. Their budget always moves slower than the county budget because they don't get their state funding numbers until way late in the year. Justice Ricker might be able to speak to this. He's a former library board member. But what this ordinance is, this will match the raises for her staff that we gave the rest of the county. And so that's what this ordinance is doing. So, Justice Ecke?
Judge, I'd like to make a motion to pass item number 19 with a due pass recommendation to the full quorum court.
Got a motion to pass to the full quorum court by Justice Ecke, second by Justice Ricker. Any further discussions or questions? Public comments. We'll take up the question. Item number 19, a motion to pass the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ecke, second by Justice Ricker. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item number 19 will move to the full quorum court. Item number 20, an ordinance dissolving one position in the road department budget and creating one position in the road department budget for 2023. Our parts supervisor at the road department, that position, the road department wants to move that from an hourly position to a salary position. The recommendation by our HR department and payroll was to dissolve the old position and create a new one. And what that does is allow the payment history of the old position to stick around, and we start afresh with a new slotted position for the road department. So that's what this particular ordinance will do. There's funding already there. They just want to change the way it's paid out. Justice Ecke?
Then, Judge, I'd like to make a motion to pass item number 20 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
I have a motion to pass item number 20 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation, second by Justice Anderson. Any further discussion or questions? Public comments? I have a motion to pass item number 20 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ecke, second by Justice Anderson. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item number 20 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 21, an ordinance anticipating additional revenue in the amount of $100,000 in the Public Safety Grant Fund and appropriating said $100,000 to the Public Safety Grant budget for 2023. This is a grant that we received. What this does is this allows the county to recognize this money and then to appropriate it to the Public Safety Grant Fund. I have a Justice Ecke.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to pass item number 20 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ecke, second by Justice Dean. Justice Koger.
Going from the Public Safety Grant Fund to the Machinery and Equipment line item in Public Safety Grant, are we buying some specific piece of equipment or machinery with that, or?
Sheriff Cantrell, can you speak to that, sir?
This was a grant that, that the state gave us. They had $5.some million in a grant to, for agencies to apply for. We applied for a grant to purchase mobile video recorders, and so that's what this grant can be used for. And so it'll be used to purchase mobile video recorders to replace the antiquated ones in our car.
Will it be sufficient to replace everyone, all of them?
No, but $100,000 was the maximum amount of their grant.
Okay. That's all.
Thank you. Any further questions for Sheriff Cantrell? Justice Dennis.
Who does the work and writes the grants for you?
Well, we wrote the grant for this one, but in coordination with the grants department that works under County Judge
I was just gonna
Deakins.
say
Now,
that-
this was written back when Judge Wood was a county judge, but they assist us in making sure all the paperwork is proper. And
Sure.
that we
I
meet
just
all
want
the-
to say thank you.
Yeah,
That's all.
yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And to whoever did the work.
Any further discussion or questions? Public comments? Okay, we'll take up the question. Item number 21, I have a motion to pass the full quorum court by Justice Ecke, second by Justice Dean. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item number 21 will move to the full quorum court. Item number 22, an ordinance recognizing additional revenue in the amount of $121,746 in the Law Enforcement Grant Fund and appropriating said $121,746 from the Law Enforcement Grant Fund to the SCAP fiscal year 2021 budget for 2023. Discussion or questions? Justice Fleming?
I'd like to make a motion to take it on to the full quorum court.
I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with the due pass recommendation by J.P. Lemming, second by J.P. Lyons. Further discussion, Justice Coger?
Well, I guess my question on this would be, is this, what time period? Is this 2021, but it covers through 2020, is that correct?
Sheriff Cantrell?
But it's going in.
Yes, that is correct.
That's correct, okay. And so do you, I just want to be reassured, Sheriff Cantrell, so it's your opinion that when we take this money for the state criminal alien assistance program, that does not contribute to our jail overcrowding because we hold people who are subject to ICE detainers longer? Is that correct?
It does not increase our crowding in our jail. These are people that are here on felony charges that are also criminal aliens that meet the qualifications that the Attorney General has set forth.
Okay, that's, so if we did not participate in this program, the jail population would not be affected. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I just don't think we should be taking money for this because I'm afraid that it sends a wrong message to our immigrant community. I think it harms them. Thank you.
Any further discussion or questions for Sheriff Cantrell on this particular matter? Any public comments? With that, we'll take up the item. Item number 22, motion to pass the full quorum court by Justice Lemming, second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed?
Judge, I would call for a voice vote on this. Show, I'd rather have a voice vote. Aren't I entitled to that? I mean, not a voice vote, a count where we know how each person votes, not just a yes or nay.
Ms. Meyer, will you please call a roll?
Call the roll. Okay, I'm sorry.
David Wilson. Yes. Fred Anderson. Yes. Kyle Lyons. Yes. Lisa Ecke. Yes. Charles Dean. Yes. Chandra Washington. No. Beth Coger. No. Robert Dennis. Yes. Suki Hires. No. Evelyn Rio Stafford. No. Willie Lemming. No. Gary Ricker. Yes. Butch Pond. Yes. Pass.
Item number 22 will move to the full quorum court with the due pass recommendation. Item number 23, an ordinance correcting clerical errors in the sheriff's budget and the jail budget for 2023. Sheriff Cantrell, you might speak to this too, but this has to do with the compensation and grading slots in the budget, and this is to fix that, sir?
Yes, these were just some clerical errors that were made as we presented the budget, and we just need to get them cleared away. There's no monetary impact to the budget on these slots. We just need to get them clarified and the budget is accurate.
Justice Ecke?
I make a motion to pass item number 23 to the full quorum court with the due pass recommendation.
I have a motion to pass item number 23 to the full quorum court with the due pass recommendation by Justice Ecke, second by Justice Pond. Any further questions? Justice Lemming?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, clerical error, $619,000, that's a bunch. I think that's because of a rush.
Well, I think we're on item number 23.
23.
Justice Lemming.
Okay, sorry, back up.
Any further discussions or questions on item number 23? Public comments? All right, we'll take up item number 23. I have a motion to pass the full quorum court by Justice Ecke, second by Justice Pond. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item number 23 moved to the full quorum court. Item number 24, an ordinance appropriating additional revenue in the amount of $619,342 from the unappropriated reserves in the general fund to the various line items in the sheriff's budget and the jail budget for 2023. As some of you justices know, we have a step compensation plan for both now the enforcement and detention sides of the sheriff's department. In odd number years, correct me, Sheriff Cantrell, if I get offline here, they get adjusted with a COLA. And in last year's budget, the COLA was not added into their compensation plan. So this represents the COLA, which is listed in the ordinance 4.6%, across both detention and enforcement positions. Justice Ricker?
Make a motion to pass this to the full quorum court at due pass.
I have a motion to pass the full quorum court but with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ricker, second by Justice Anderson. Further question or discussion? Public comments? We'll take up item number 24. I have a motion to pass the full quorum court by Justice Ricker, second by Justice Anderson. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? No. That will move to the full quorum court. 25, an ordinance, item number 25, an ordinance appropriating the amount of $554,210 from the unappropriated reserves in the general fund to the county jail budget for the jail medical contract for 2023. As you know, we had to put our jail medical provider back out for bids, and that resulted in a higher budgeted contracted cost, and this supplements that from what was passed in the budget last fall. Justice Ecke?
I'd like to make a motion that we pass item number 25 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
I have a motion to pass item number 25 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ecke, second by Justice Dean. Further discussion? Justice Coger?
Thank you, Judge. I'm going to vote for this, of course, because I don't think we have a choice on this, but I want to state that I would like to see this jail contract bid every year, and I think we need to start in October at least, because the way this was done, there was only like a 2-week period when people could actually bid. And to make a bid, you have to have data and documents. You have to have information to make an informed bid. So I feel like we cut out a lot of possible providers who would have been interested if they'd had sufficient time to do that. So I just want to put that out there now, because the last time the medical contract was bid before this, it was 2015. So I think to be good stewards of taxpayers' dollars, we need to know that we're getting the best possible deal, but also we need to know that we're getting the best possible service for the people who are in our jail. And so we need more time to do that. We need more people to come in and to look at that. Those are my comments, but I will be voting for this because, like I say, I don't think we have a choice.
Thank you, Justice Coger. Justice Dennis?
I suppose we might not have a choice, but I'm not understanding how we increased that much. I mean, what's the story behind this?
Sheriff Cantrell, feel free to jump in, but if you remember late last year, Karis does our medical for the jail, and they could not get insurance for that, so they had to pull out of the contract. Subsequent to that, they were able to get insurance, and this is the increased in cost.
This was an across the region, across the country phenomena that people that provide jail medicine or jail medical services saw their medical malpractice increase substantially, and that's the reason for this increase is their medical malpractice, not just theirs, but across the country, jail medical providers' malpractice went up. We suspect primarily because of COVID, because of some jails had some deaths and had some probably some big claims from their medical providers, and we did not, but the insurance is the way it works, I suppose. A few claims in Florida when there's a hurricane causes all of our rates to go up a little, and I suppose that's what happened here.
So is it lawsuits or what is it? I mean, is it the actual physical cost? Or I mean, I just don't see the cost going that much unless something happened to cause it to go up.
Nothing happened with our provider that I'm aware of that they had to pay out some large, or their insurance had to pay out some large sum of money. I think it's just across the nation. They saw providers that they did have to pay out for, so we're reaping those or the insurance company's reaping the benefits, I guess, from everyone,
Okay.
or the money from everyone.
Well, I guess in California, when you have a fire and it wipes out a whole, you know,
Yeah,
a few counties, then that insurance company has costs that they pass on to everybody, but this seems like an
yeah,
awful lot of
yeah.
increase.
It is an awful lot. Fortunately, I guess if there is a, fortunately to this money will come from the jail unappropriated reserves, which has about almost $4 million in it. And the vast majority of that previous ordinance is out of the jail unappropriated reserves, so it won't affect our general fund revenues, which,
Just like to see it go somewhere besides insurance.
I agree, yes, sir.
Justice Hires?
Thank you, Judge. I want to second JP Koger on this, that I'd like to see this bid out more frequently. I don't want to vote for this, but I'm going to, but for the same reasons that she said. A lot of my issues with this, I just feel like the way things went down last year were a little sketch. It was last minute. They pulled out. We had about 2 weeks to scramble. And then the same people that pulled out were the only ones that, it just felt off. And so I'd like to see this be rebid more frequently in the future. Thank you.
Justice Rios Stafford?
What happens if this appropriation isn't approved? What would happen?
There won't be enough money to pay the medical contract through the end of the year. They bill us in 12 increments, 12 equal increments of what the contract is, so we wouldn't have enough to fulfill the last couple of months, I suppose.
Would that mean that the recipient would have to tighten their belt, or would they have the ability
No,
to
they-
pull
you know,
out of
we-
the
we-
contract and get rebid, or?
Well, we've signed a contract with them for this amount for a year, so I think the county's obligated to pay our contract, otherwise I guess we're in default, and then, yeah, I suppose if you default on a contract, then you end up in court.
All right, thank you.
Justice Lyons?
Yeah, I just wanted to understand the record correctly. As I understand it, there was a lot of weird stuff went on, but as I understand it, there were multiple bidders on this contract that we received. Is that correct?
3 bids were
3
received.
bids. And I'm assuming this was the lowest of the 3?
Yes, we had a bid for 2.2, which was this one. 2.3 was the other bid, and the other bid was just over $5 million.
And then what is the contract terms? We're talking about possibly rebidding this every year, but what is the contract terms with them? Is it a year-by-year contract? Or is it a contract for X number of years that we then be in default or have contractual problems if we tried to rebid it?
It's a year-to-year contract with a renewal clause built into it.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions or discussion? Justice Koger?
I guess I would just like to say, make sure to what was just said, that it's a renewal clause built in, but it's just for a 1-year term. You're not required to renew, is that correct?
That's correct, yes. There are clauses, and there are also that we can disengage.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Public comments?
Sarah Moore, Fayetteville, Arkansas. I'm also the executive director of the Arkansas Justice Reform Coalition. And during this bid process, we did express some concern about the way the medical contract proceeded forward. And so I would echo some of the sentiments that have come forward from the other JPs, that we really consider bidding this contract yearly. I have a lot of concern that there was some conversation that was happening between medical with the jail on October 31st, where there was some consideration that they may not renew the contract, and they were looking at the description of the contract. But the public and we weren't really made notice that they were pulling out until that first week of December. That did cause some scrambling. This is a complicated contract. It's taking care of medical, mental health. I mean, people can die in our facility if they don't have appropriate care, especially with mental health. I took this actually to the Fayetteville City Board of Health when we were given the short notice, where they have many medical providers like Dr. Sharkey, Dr. Berner, who's from Community Clinic, and there was a lot of concern from those professionals that because of the complexities of the contract that we wouldn't get a lot of folks that would be able to participate in that short time frame. They also expressed that this could be a great opportunity to partner with the community, with Community Clinic, with UAMS being here, and other local providers like Washington Regional to do a cooperative, but they would need much more time, obviously, to work with the county. And so I think that's a great opportunity to be able to partner as far as we have many students in this area and trying to keep them in this area to provide care, to really think about what kind of thoughtful process we could have in the future. We also talked to some national companies who told us with a quick turnaround that there were a lot of complexities and questions and that would not give them enough time to vet out, so they didn't participate. So we did have multiple folks that bid, but there were only 3. I think in 2015 we had about 5 or 6, and so it seems odd that we went down during this process. The other thing I want to draw your attention to that I have a lot of concern about in our facility is mental health. And I think this provider currently is not offering nearly the level of service from the previous contract possibly. And so if we need to look at an additive contract, but screening of mental health immediately when people come in the facility, I'm talking to individuals who've come in our facility who have asked repeatedly for over 24 hours for mental health help and have not been provided that. One of those individuals shared with me they were in a segregation cell and they almost took their life. So it's an incredible concern for me going forward. I know that the jail is probably doing, everything that they can to try to make sure people are safe. But the real thing is that people are in crisis and in a bad place sometimes when they're in our facility, and it is upon us to keep them as safe as possible. And I think that we can do a little bit more to make that happen. So I'd really urge you to look into considering a mental health provider specifically for the facility. Thank you.
Public comments. With that, we'll take up item number 25. We have a motion to pass the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ecke, second by Justice Dean. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item number 25 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 26, an ordinance appropriating the total amount of $337,734 from the unappropriated reserves in the general fund to the machinery and equipment line item for the sheriff and jail budgets for 2023. This ordinance is related somewhat to the ordinance with the coroner. Last year, we had some capital requests by the sheriff's department that we passed in the October full quorum court meeting. These are those amounts. They did not make it into the budget, and this ordinance is to correct that. Any discussion, questions? Justice Fleming?
So item 26, that's what we're on, correct? 26.
Yes, sir.
So this is to buy 30 mobile video recorders. What was the grant for? Was it for cars and this is for people?
Sheriff Cantrell, would you like to speak to that, sir?
Yes, the grant was for, also for mobile video recorders. We wanted to phase these in over a period of years. So 30 is 15 for the jail, 15 for the enforcement side. And then we would ask for 38 again next year until we got all the cars outfitted. We were able to get that grant, so that will reduce our request somewhat because we were able to get recorders on the grant. And we've applied for that, or that grant will be available to apply for again, I think next month, and we'll apply again for some state money.
Justice Lyons?
What's the total, Sheriff? How many do we need? Total?
Let me ask my IT guy.
That's right.
How many? Approximately 75 total.
So we're down to needing 75. So this will get us 30, and then the grant will get us, what, a couple more?
Yeah.
10 more?
10 more? Yeah,
Okay.
about $10,000.
So that's 40 to 75, so you got 30. Okay, thank you.
Justice Ricker?
Make a motion to pass it on to the full quorum court.
Motion to pass to the full quorum court with the due pass recommendation by Justice Ricker, second by Justice Lyons. Any further discussion or questions for Sheriff? Public comments? We'll take up the motion. I have a motion to pass the full quorum court by Justice Ricker, second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item number 26 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 27, an ordinance appropriating the amount of $534,214 from the unappropriated reserves in the general fund and $190,045 from the unappropriated reserves in the jail fund to the vehicles line items in the sheriff's budget for 2023. I believe these are trucks that we approved last year, but we haven't been able to get our hands on. Is that correct, Sheriff Cantrell?
That's correct, but we just learned today that we need to amend the amount from $190,045. That needs to be amended to $95,761 because we were notified yesterday that two of those vehicles are in, and they'll cut the check on Thursday. We should take delivery of those on Friday, so we'll be able to pay for those out of the 2022 money. But the rest of the 2022 money we need to roll into 2023 to pay for these vehicles when they do arrive. So the money was appropriated in 2022 to buy these. Supply chain issues caused us not to be able to get them, but two did come in this week. So,
Justice Ecke?
Just to be clear, that's $95,761?
correct. That's the total amount. Instead of the 190, it needs to be 95 because two of those four are here.
I make a motion that we accept the amendment, that we amend the amount to $95,761 and pass item number 27 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
Well, let's take them up separately. So first I have a motion to amend by Justice Ecke to amend the amounts $190,000 to $45 to $95,761. Do I have a second on that? Second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? So now we have a motion to pass the amended ordinance to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ecke.
Correct.
Second by Justice Lyons. Any further Justice Lyons?
Just clarification, so this money was appropriated in 2022 for you to buy these vehicles, you just couldn't get them, correct?
That's correct,
So
yes.
we're just moving the money from 2022 to 2023 for those that, you got two, which is why it went down,
That's correct.
of what we need to move over. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Justice Dennis?
I'm a little confused on it. I was a little confused on it. I thought he was gonna need the extra money, but if the vehicle's coming in real soon, we have to vote on it again to get the other one approved? You're going from 190,000 to half of that.
Right, yeah, two of those
Are you
vehicles are
gonna
in
get two of them?
that will be paid for with the, we can pay for items purchased in 2022 up through February 23rd. So these items will be paid for before February 23rd with our 2022 money. But after February 23rd, we won't be able to use 2022 money anymore.
I thought it was gonna be here by the 23rd. It's not?
No, two of them will be. Two of them should take delivery by Friday.
All right.
But the rest of them will be further out, perhaps March or early April.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion or questions? Any public comments? I have a motion to pass item number 27 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ecke, second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item number 27 will move to the full quorum court. Item number 28, an ordinance appropriating additional revenue in the amount of $58,180 from the unappropriated reserves in the general fund to various line items in the sheriff's budget for 2023.
This is a insurance reimbursement for totaled vehicles, and as that insurance money comes in, it's recognized as revenue in the general fund, and then it has to be reappropriated out back to whatever line item it needs to go, whether it's the sheriff's budget or the road budget or whoever had that insurance reimbursement. So this is reimbursement for two totaled vehicles to go back into our vehicle line item.
Justice Lemming?
I make a motion to send it on to the full quorum court.
Motion to pass the full quorum court with due pass recommendation by Justice Lemming, second by Justice Anderson. Justice Anderson, any further comments? All right. Any further discussion? Public comments? We'll take up the question. I have a motion to pass item number 28 to the full quorum court with the due pass recommendation by Justice Lemming, second by Justice Anderson. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item number 28 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 29, an ordinance appropriating the total amount. Let me back up for just a second. This is the first added item that we added at the front of the agenda. Okay. Item number 29, an ordinance appropriating the total amount of $6,352.55 to the grants budget for 2023. Kind of a mirrored ordinance to our new comptroller. We have hired a new grants administrator. Her name is Dr. Bridget Russell. She brings over 30 years of grants writing and public administration to the county. We're very excited to have her. Like Comptroller Story, I believe that her experience was commiserate enough to bring her to the first quartile of that salary range, and this is the additional dollars to do that for the rest of the year. Justice Ecke?
Thank you. I am so glad we found somebody with these qualifications, and I'd like to make a motion that we pass ordinance number 2023 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
I have a motion to pass item number 29 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ecke, second by Justice Dennis. Justice Coger?
Yes, thank you, Judge. When will she be able to start?
We're waiting to hear back from Dr. Russell. She has a position right now that she would like to, of course, help them transition and start back. So on our end, it's as soon as possible. But
Okay, does she live here close by, or she's out of state, or?
No, she lives here.
She is, okay, thank
She
you.
lives in the region. Justice Lyons?
Is this a new position for the county?
This is not a new position for the
replacing
county.
a
This is
position.
replacing our grants administrator. Further discussion or questions? Public comments? Taking up the question, I have a motion to pass item number 29 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ecke, second by Justice Dennis. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item number 29 will move to the full quorum court. Item number 30 is a resolution authorizing the submittal of an application to the Arkansas Rural Community Grant Program to assist the Boston Mountain Fire Department District 8 in purchase of new bunker gear and extractor equipment. This is a grant. What we're doing is just basically, sponsoring this grant for the department. It's a matching grant that they've come up with the funds with. So, Justice Ricker?
I make a motion that we move this on to the full quorum court with a due pass.
I have a motion to pass the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ricker, second by Justice Anderson. Justice Lemming?
I don't need nothing.
Okay. Any further discussion? Public comments? We'll take up the question. I have a motion to pass item number 30 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ricker, second by Justice Anderson. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item number 30 will move to the full quorum court. Before we close the meeting, I'd like to explain to our new colleagues, we do have a process that's called the consent agenda, which bundles multiple items up to one item on the quorum court, and we can pass them in group. So it's an exercise of efficiency. Usually we like to do that for ordinances who are non-controversial. I don't know if anybody took notes, but I have. You've got. Would you like to make the motion? Justice Hires?
Move that items, hold on, let me go back to the beginning. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 19, 20, 21, 23, 24, 26, 27, and 28 be at, 29 and 30 be added to the consent agenda.
I have a motion to pass stated items by Justice Hires to the consent agenda. Would you repeat those one more time for
Yes,
Ms.
I will.
Myra?
12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, 20, 21, 23, 24, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30.
Did you have a number 18?
I only circled it because Willie
Okay,
abstained.
that's true.
Yeah.
I have a motion to pass those items to the consent agenda by Justice Hires, a second by Justice Dennis. All those in favor? Those opposed? One final thing I'll say to that, when we get to the quorum court meeting, any member by their sole authority, can pull items off the consent agenda. So just keep that in mind. If you have more questions on something, you can pull that off at the full quorum court. With that, our final item is public comments. We have a 12-minute public comment period with 3 minutes limit to each person. Public comments. Seeing none, this meeting's adjourned.